So, I've been excited to cover today's game since the very start of my Twisted Metal series, because even from within a franchise as bonkers as Twisted Metal, Small Brawl still manages to be somewhat of an anomaly. Mainly because it's a family-friendly game. Unlike the other entries in the series, this game doesn't delve into the darker side of humanity. It skirts around death, demons, and carnage, and instead delivers a more adolescent and humorous experience. Also, you may or may not be pleased to know that this game wasn't developed by 989 Studios, nor was it developed by SingleTrack. This time around, Incog Inc. Entertainment was handed the IP. Again, kinda. I explained this in my Twisted Metal 3 video, but in case you haven't seen it, I'll summarize. Twisted Metal 1 and 2 were made by SingleTrack, headed by David Jaffe and Scott Campbell. Some drama happened, then Twisted Metal was given to 989 Studios, who then made 3 and 4. Then, when everyone realized that 989 Studios kinda sucked at it, Twisted Metal was given to Incog Inc. Entertainment, mouthful I know, which was founded by, guess who, Scott Campbell. You know, I'm fairly certain David Jaffe was there too. Anyway, they'd go on to make Small Brawl, Black Online, and Head On. Then Incog Inc. Entertainment got dissolved. Campbell and Jaffe would then found Eat Sleep Play, along with most of the OG Twisted Metal devs, where they would go on to develop the PS2 version of Head On, aptly named the Extra Twisted Edition, along with the most recent and final entry, Twisted Metal, aka Twisted Metal PS3 or Twisted Metal 2012, take your pick. As such, this is why I'll be drawing quite a few comparisons between Small Brawl and Twisted Metal 2, as opposed to say 3 or 4. As a matter of fact, it's almost easier to pretend 3 and 4 don't exist, because to the original developers, they don't. Anyway, let's get back to Small Brawl. Now, what if I told you that this game, the game you're seeing on screen right now, was released about 4 months after Twisted Metal Black? This game. Crazy, huh? But it was. Small Brawl was originally intended to be on the PS2 with the graphic style of Black, but Small Brawl got sent to die as a PS1 game instead. Half because the devs didn't want two Twisted Metal games competing on a console so close together, and the other half is that kids are more likely to still have the PS1 and hadn't upgraded yet. In any case, critics of the day were not kind to this game. Out of all the major publications, the highest score given to this game was a staggering 6.5 out of 10, and it was given by GameSpot, who stated that some will immediately be turned away by the graphics and others by the more childish design, but if your PlayStation is still kicking, you might want to check it out. This lukewarm blurb is the closest I've come to finding a positive review on Small Brawl. Play Magazine wrote, "This might be where Martha Stewart's evil siblings reside." I have no idea what that means, but I'm sure it made sense back in 01. GameZone mentioned that the graphics felt very unfinished, and the changes included in the game lacked any real depth. GamePro noted that the gameplay was laboriously slow, and that there's no real sense of speed. Electronic Gaming Monthly mentioned that the plumber's ass that sticks out from underneath the sink in the kitchen level is the best feature in the game, and Game Informer remarked that Small Brawl doesn't even live up to the first 4 PlayStation 1 titles in the series. Ouch, have some mercy. Well, now I'm doubly excited. Let's jump right in, shall we? Does anyone remember Twisted Metal Small Brawl? At its core, Small Brawl's story isn't really anything new. Calypso sets up a tournament promising the victor anything their hearts desire. Contestants join, they duke it out, and the winner gets their wish granted. Sometimes. But instead of a demonic being who wears a ring that collects the souls of the dead, which is the whole purpose of the tournaments by the way, Calypso is a 12-year-old schoolyard bully with braces and pimples. Oh, and the contestants are also children, most of whom are victims of Calypso's bullying. For example, Mortimer, or Shadow, joins to win his pet back after Calypso stole it. Yeah, the game's pretty innocent. But believe it or not, Small Brawl's story does tie in with the other games, being 1 and 2, most notably through Spectre. This game's iteration of the character is 100% the son of Twisted Metal 2's Ken Masters, the driver of, well, Spectre. This is proven during his victory cutscene, where Calypso digs up any and all information on Spectre's estranged dad, and ends up giving him a picture of Ken Masters along with the keys to the real Spectre. This alone makes Small Brawl not only part of the main story, but it also places the game somewhere either before or after Twisted Metal 2, but it's kinda confusing as to when. Well, it was at first. It's no secret that this franchise has a lot of plot holes and continuity issues between games, but here's my theory. We do know that this is Ken Masters' Spectre simply by its appearance, and the game telling us, but this game can't be happening after Twisted Metal 2 because Spectre is here, and in one piece, so either the events of Twisted Metal 2 haven't happened yet, or they did in Ken 1. But if that were the case, his face would be in the sky for all to see. Personally, I believe this game takes place before Twisted Metal 2. I'll also use Mr. Slam's victory scene as further proof. In it, the real Mr. Slam grabs Calypso and buries him in dirt. I mean, maybe I'm reading into it too much and it was only a few frames, but it's definitely Mr. Slam. If Twisted Metal 2's events had happened and Spectre had won, pieces of Mr. Slam would be scattered across a field in Holland, but here he is. Long story short, Ken Masters is kind of an absentee father, and I mean, with a kid like that, can you really blame him? He probably reeks of dry butter and dander, and lifting up that sheet must be a lot like opening the oven and getting blasted by heat. Only here, it's the pleasant aroma of a road crew laying down hot asphalt. Not to mention how crusty it probably is. Ugh, you know what? Not worth getting into. Let's just hope the rest of the roster isn't this sticky. As I mentioned earlier, this time around all the contestants are children, so naturally, instead of controlling an armored 10-ton death machine with miniguns bolted to the hood, you instead control RC cars that shoot various bottle rockets and other fireworks. What a dramatic tonal shift. But hey, after 2 whole games of sadness and uncertainty, it looks like we're finally getting the original roster back. Well, aside from Roadkill, Minion, and Grasshopper, but regardless, it's still awesome to finally play as the classics once again. No more talking parrots, no more knockoff thumpers, this is the real deal. Albeit in RC car form, but after Twisted Metal 3 and 4, I'll take what I can get. In comparison to Twisted Metal 2, the cars, characters, and wishes may be slightly different, but they still heavily mirror those of their Twisted Metal 2 counterparts. If you played Twisted Metal 2, it's all very familiar. Mr. Slam slams, Outlaw still wants to stop Calypso, Hammerhead is still a hard rock loving stoner. As I said, nothing new. As a matter of fact, the similarities are so abundant that at least this time around, it's not really worth going over each car in detail, especially taking into account that by and large not a lot of detail was even given to this game's roster in the first place. Quite a few drivers just share the name of their vehicle. Their bios mostly just consist of their wish and some blurb about Calypso being a little ankle-biting asshole. There isn't really any backstory or extra world building involved anywhere. It's a very contained experience. These cars and characters are one-offs in a game that, aside from some connections, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Which again does make sense as they were targeting a younger demographic with this game. Along with the default roster, there are 5 unlockable characters, 2 of which we're familiar with, being Axel and Darkseid. However, this game introduced 3 new unique characters, Mime, Trapper, and Piecemeal. Mime apparently copies the special of the nearest opponent. Trapper has an insane amount of armor and unleashes a barrel of monkeys on you as his special, and Piecemeal is cobbled together with the pieces of other RC cars. Also, he's massive. You know, now that I think about it, he kinda reminds me of Darktooth. That being said, I'm more interested and frustrated by the method in which you unlock these characters. Axel and Darkseid are easy to unlock. You simply need to find their tokens during the tournament and collect them. But the other 3? Oh boy. To unlock Mime, you have to kill 30 opponents in endurance mode in order to unlock the level with his token. And it's a real time sink too. I gave it 3 attempts and the best I could get was 21 kills. Anyway, if you're successful, which again I was not, you then enter the unlocked level and shoot 4 stockings down to collect the token. For Trapper, you need to beat the game once with every character on normal. Then for Piecemeal, you need to beat the game once on hard with Trapper. So in total, and assuming the unlockable cars count, you'd have to beat the game about 15 or 16 times in total, plus kill 30 enemies in the endurance mode just to unlock everyone. And I get that this is a challenge and it encourages replayability, but still, that's a lot of repetition. A little too much for me. But before we move on, there are a few interesting oddities with the roster that I feel I should touch on. First off, Crimson Fury is back for the first time since Twisted Metal 1. Also, this game's Thumper has 2 drivers, where canonically Bruce Cochrane is the sole driver. Well, it seems that during development of Twisted Metal 1, Thumper was originally meant to have a co-pilot, as seen in the scrapped live-action Lost ending. While not confirmed as far as I know, I believe this is where the character Vinny originates from. Also, Minion was originally planned to be in this game, but he was scrapped and replaced by Piecemeal, as the game was, say it with me, intended for a younger demographic. And I mean, they couldn't just have a full-on soul-eating demon just hanging around with a bunch of kids. It's not really a good look, even by Hell standards. So we have the RC cars and the characters, plus the whole Calypso is a neighborhood bully spin, but I think Small Brawl's theme and aesthetic really comes together when looking at the stages themselves. Each level has its own theme and set of hazards, as well as secret rooms and portals and the like, you know, classic Twisted Metal stuff. The first level is Playground Peril, and I mean, it makes sense. If you were to bust out the RC cars as a kid, the playground would be stop number 1. I can't even tell you how many times I've launched an RC car off the top of a slide, often into the side of my friends' heads, but that's not important. As for the level itself, it's quite condensed, but you can shoot the swings that are out of bounds for some pickups and Axel's unlock token. Also, you can drive up the ramp and off the seesaw, as well as fight on the upper platforms for some added verticality, which is always a good thing in my books. All in all, it's a good first level. As a matter of fact, Small Brawl doesn't really have any real stinkers to speak of. I mean, Gridiron Gore, which takes place on a football field, is just a massive empty flat square of nothingness. And in past videos, I've talked about how much those kinds of levels just suck. However, I'm willing to overlook it just this once simply because the game's gimmick charmed me so much. And I have to give them credit for adding some dynamics to the level. There's a guy sleeping on a riding lawnmower, and if he hits you, he deals massive damage. The environmental pickup causes him to chase the closest vehicle. There are also 2 helmet decorations that can be blown up to reveal health pickups, but beyond that, it's very flat and empty. And on the other hand, you have Minigolf Mayhem, which is far from flat and empty. It takes place, obviously, on a mini-golf course, and I have to say, the idea of causing chaos on a mini-golf course with RC cars is amazing. But what I really like is the Aztec/Tiki theme of the level. The color palette and skybox are also both very nice. In terms of how it plays, the multiple rooms and paths make it easy to set up a trap or lose a tail. There's a volcano, a pyramid, a swinging spider, and some other novelties that are typically there to stop your ball. Only here they act as stage hazards. I absolutely love this. It does a great job in making the world around your little RC battle feel more alive. Minigolf Mayhem repeats for the boss fight against Trapper. He's a safari-type truck with an absolute boatload of armor. His special is a barrel of monkeys, which is incredibly annoying to deal with, but still, it's nothing compared to Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal 4. Now, as great as Minigolf Mayhem is, I'd have to say my favorite level is Easy Death Oven. First off, it has a load of verticality. You can get up on the counters and the island. It reminds me, again, of Army Men Sarge's Heroes, and I love it. You can burn yourself on the stove, get carved by the can opener, and trapped in a toaster oven. This level just tickles my brain in all the right ways. Also, if you napalm the plumber's ass, he'll fart, blowing holes in the cabinets behind him and opening up a hidden room with some pickups as well as Darkseid's unlock token, so that's fun. But one level I could never really figure out is Carnival. I mean, it's a good level, that's not the issue, it's just I can't really figure out where this stage is meant to take place. And I know it's completely irrelevant, but it bothers me nonetheless. The level itself is just a raised hallway running around a lower central area. There's a magic tunnel, a spinning platform, there are saw blades and swinging axes, and who could forget tombstones? You know, standard carnival shit. But is it a bedroom, a playroom, what? I'm not sure, and I don't think I'll ever find out, and it bothers me. Well, wherever it takes place, I'm sure it's a lot less hostile than Meet Your Maker's setting, which takes place in a meat locker. Get it? Meet Your Maker? Meat locker? Death? That type of stuff? Funny, eh? Seriously though, who just lets a bunch of kids of varying degrees of cleanliness just play in a meat locker? Well, this game's manual actually has an answer. It appears some asshole who just works at the local grocery store just left the door open. But let's not get bogged down by the details. The level is a medium-sized arena with a gaggle of platforms and conveyors rising above a wide-open battleground below. And of course, the level has all the things you'd expect to see in a meat locker, like saw blades, conveyor belts that lead to crushers and grinders, and a bunch of buttons that I can never quite figure out the purpose of. It's a decent level, just not that memorable. Treetop Rumble is this game's instant death pitfall level. I guess it wouldn't be a Twisted Metal game without at least one now, would it? It's a small level that consists of a circle of tree houses, all linked by rope bridges, and if you fall, you die, standard stuff. Though this level is a bit more forgiving, or should I say way more so than Twisted Metal 2's Drop Zone or Big Leap levels. If you fall outside the loop, you die, but if you fall into the middle, a conveniently placed trampoline will bounce you back up. It's a fun time, though it's even better if you're playing as Mr. Slam. You can just toss everyone off the edge with your special for an easy win. Now, Slaying is the final level. It takes place in a theater, and I gotta be honest, it's not all that special. It's just a simple square arena with a stage and destructible benches. What is special, however, is the boss fight against Piecemeal. It starts out as a normal deathmatch, but every time you kill an enemy, Piecemeal shows up to kick your ass a bit. And once you've done enough damage to him, the rest of the drivers reappear. You rinse and repeat these steps until there are no drivers left, and then you finish off Piecemeal. I actually really enjoyed this fight. I mean, it doesn't reinvent the wheel per se, and perhaps the Darktooth boss fight was a little bit more interesting and visually striking with the Hong Kong Crunch level, but it really is a true test of endurance. I'd have to be tactful in my approach to the regular contestants in order to make sure I had enough health and ammo for Piecemeal. So that about covers all Small Brawl's main levels, and as I said, there are no real stinkers to speak of, but the standouts, for me at least, are Easy Death Oven and Mini Golf Mayhem. Although, now that I think about it, it's wild that we didn't get a bedroom level. Seems like a no-brainer, really, but then again, I guess 989 beat them to the punch with the bedroom level in Twisted Metal 4. So, at the end of the day, Twisted Metal Small Brawl is actually a pretty decent game, one which I don't think gets nearly enough credit. I mean, is it the best one in the franchise? No, but it's definitely a blast in the gameplay department. Not to mention, the pseudo-original roster making a triumphant return is awesome. I also really like the whole gimmick of kids controlling RC cars. It's mischievous, fun, and really charming, especially having grown up being influenced by things like Toy Story, Small Soldiers, and Army Men Sarge's Heroes. However, Small Brawl is a spin-off that feels like a spin-off. Taking the game as a whole, it really does kind of present itself as just a throwaway title sometimes. It simply doesn't have all that zest that made the previous entries so great. The art style is comparatively vanilla when placed next to Twisted Metal 1 and 2, and I mean again, Black was already out, so it's reasonable to assume the developers wanted everyone to look at the shiny new PS2 game instead. And that's another thing too, optics. If Small Brawl had come out a year or two earlier, I'm willing to bet it would have been viewed way more favorably. Same goes for if it wasn't a direct part of the franchise to begin with. It's a pretty decent Twisted Metal game, but it would be a great Twisted Metal knockoff, if that makes any sense. Well, with that, and after 5 Twisted Metal games, we've reached the end of an era. And what a journey it's been. For me, Twisted Metal and the PS1 go hand in fuel-covered hand. Hell, we were blazing through the streets of LA and blasting other drivers away in Twisted Metal 1 just months after the North American release of the PS1. And we were still blowing cars away, albeit RC cars, even after the PS2 came out. Twisted Metal isn't just another great franchise birthed during the 5th generation of consoles, it's one of the generation's best. And its DNA is a small part of what makes PlayStation as revered as it is. Well, with all that said, what about all of you? Did you remember Twisted Metal Small Brawl? If so, where would you place it on your ranking of the best Twisted Metal games thus far? Let me know down in the comments. As for me, I'm out. I'm gonna go drink some Ipecac syrup and play a VR flight sim. Wish me luck. Oh, and have yourself a wonderful day.